Whilst using my $750 Sony camera for video calls looks excellent, having a $750 camera permanently sat on top of my screen is entirely not practical. Over the past 6 months, I've spent hundreds and hundreds of dollars trying to find a webcam that can get close to the same quality. So in this video, I'm going to show you from the crappiest quality to the best in terms of video and audio quality to help you decide which one is right for you. And spoiler alert, most of them are just a plain up waste of money. So first up, let me show you this. This is the quality that I'm trying to beat, but instead of this mirrorless camera that needs to be like manually switched on each time and is pretty complicated to use, it needs to be a proper webcam that's always on and with simple controls. Up first is the industry standard when it comes to webcams, and everyone seems to have one of these. It's around $80, and it's the first thing that I bought when this whole like pandemic thing hit, and that is the Logitech C920. Now these things are supposed to be really good webcams, but as you can see, the video quality sucks and the audio quality is pretty horrible too. Sure, they're great for people on a budget, but I want good quality, and this thing is far from good quality. On to the next one now, and here is the one that I honestly thought would solve all of my problems. Like, I plan to make a whole video about this one from what I saw from other creators online. It is the Opal C1, and it costs around $300, marketed as the first professional webcam. Now it certainly looks like it fits the bill here with quotes like DSLR quality in a webcam for the first time and like image quality you've never seen before in a webcam. So I was pumped to give this a try when it came through my door a couple of months ago, and I have been using it every single day since. But I've quickly realized that the Opal C1 is still very much in beta. Now there are some cool features of course included in the software, the ability to lock focus, blur out the background, overlay text and logos, and track your movement, add effects to the video and control things like your exposure and contrast. But unfortunately, this $300 webcam fails for me at the first hurdle with the fact it just doesn't seem to be able to keep things in focus. I mean, am I in focus? It just looks constantly blurry. It is also single-handedly responsible for keeping my studio absolutely boiling hot throughout this heat wave we've had like recently in Europe, and I'm only kind of joking about that. The camera itself is permanently, like really hot, like surface of the sun temperature. Even when not in use. I actually got to the stage where I would be unplugging this from my machine between using it just to avoid having this like blob of red hot webcam attached to my screen like permanently. It does have a magnetically attached cover for when you're not using it, which is kind of a nice addition. But what I was also kind of a little disappointed was that there was nowhere to store the cover whilst using it, so you're kind of left with this at your desk. I was kind of expecting to be able to like magnetically like snap it somewhere to the top or the side or the back of the camera, instead of yet again having another lens cap randomly just like left on my desk. Now the audio I felt also wasn't the best, and I had several comments whilst on video calls to switch back to my standard audio setup, which admittedly is like a Scarlett Solo and the Shure SM7B, which is like a pretty unfair comparison, but it is not something that I expected from a $300 webcam. This is horrendously out of focus. Wow. To be fair to Opal, kind of, they do regularly push out updates to improve many of the issues that I've been experiencing, and they did offer me a full refund, but for me, this isn't going to replace my Sony camera. I mean, come on. It's not even in focus. And honestly, at this stage, I've pretty much just given up since there weren't any other options other than cameras like the Logitech Brio, Elgato's Facecam, and of course, the built-in webcam to things like the MacBook Air. Of course, none of those looked any better than what I already had. That was until a couple of weeks ago when Insta360 released their take on like a professional quality webcam. We've been here before. Now this is the Insta360 Link, which somewhat looks like someone took a DJI drones camera on a gimbal and mounted it to your screen. And much like the Opal C1, I saw a ton of YouTubers uploading their videos about how amazing this camera was. All of them, of course, like we are now, in perfect lighting conditions, which we all know aren't what we have at home. I mean, literally, when I hop on calls with my webcam, I rarely even bother to turn the lights on, let alone set up this, crazy setup of lights and softboxes and all these things that all these other like YouTubers have done in their videos. But I didn't want to drop like yet another $300 on yet another webcam full of like these empty promises. So instead, I actually reached out to Insta360 and just asked if they would consider sending me one out to review. Like, pretty unlikely. They're a massive company. I'm like a tiny YouTube channel, but they did, and I'm actually forever grateful that they did. Otherwise, I would have just thought a good webcam was just a fantasy. But the Insta360 Link is everything that it promised, like pretty much. I've been genuinely impressed by this thing and have been using it daily for the last few weeks or so. It is smaller than the Opal C1. It doesn't constantly overheat. It lights up when it's in use, and that also switches off and then points to the lens to the ground when it's not in use. So we're off to a great start so far. Now the video quality is also very impressive. I mean, compared to the Opal C1, this is in focus. Now it works up to 4K resolution, which looks very close to the Sony camera, with the exception, of course, of not having that kind of blurry depth of field background thing that you get, which you just don't get unless you get a proper kind of camera like this. And even when you do drop it down to like 1080p or 720p, which is what most webcam services like Zoom or Google Meet use, it is the best by so far of all the others I've looked at. Now there are zero focus issues, and I mean zero focus issues. It focuses quickly, accurately, and there's even a minimum focusing distance of 4 inches, so you can hold items right up close to the camera and it focuses like pretty well, to be honest. And if I'm gonna try something here that's gonna break everything. Let's have a look. Is this gonna work? Oh, you can see how delayed the Opal C1 is for a start. Opal C1, I'd say that's a failed focus. And the Insta360 focuses. MacBook does a good job of focusing. To be fair, the Logitech's doing a better job at focusing than the Opal C1. So take what you must from that. And the audio is seemingly much better. Like, I've not had a single complaint when using the built-in mic on this camera yet, and I've not heard it back yet personally. But here is, of course, what the audio sounds like. You've been hearing it from all the cameras now, coming directly from the Insta360 Link's onboard mic. So maybe let me know down in the comments which one you think is best for sound. With the 360 Link, there is onboard noise cancellation features here, which have held out pretty well against like screaming kids in the background whilst I've been on a few video calls. Nobody's noticed, so that must be good. And then there is the software experience, which is similar to the Opal C1's features, but overall it just feels way more polished and not at all like a beta experience like you have with the Opal. You have manual control of the camera, which is not quite, but you can almost do a full 360 rotation. And FYI, you can also double tap the front of the camera, which will kind of realign the camera and center it itself. There's a whole section for like tweaking the exposure, the white balance, brightness, contrast, like all that good stuff. And then we come to the more intelligent features, which for the most part work really well. Like the hand gestures, although they are a bit gimmicky, are actually quite practical. Like holding your palm up activates face tracking, which will follow you as you move around the room. Actually pretty good. Now I've had a few situations where it will lose me if I move too quickly, but honestly that's only when I've been like really trying to push the limits of the camera here. There is also an AI zoom feature here that works well to stay zoomed in to keep your head, half your body or your whole body in shot. And whilst I don't have enough space to, of course, to get my whole body or even half my body in shot here to test it, it does a good job tracking my face like all the way until I leave my room, like literally until I leave my room. Now there are also features to zoom using gestures, which is pretty good and works pretty well. No complaints there. And there is one more that is incredibly clever and will let you find and focus on a whiteboard to let you share or like draw on. So in the box with the camera, you get these 4 stickers that you can attach to the corners of a whiteboard or, to be honest, any wall. And then simply throwing a V up in the air will then tell the Link to start searching for the board, where it will then find it and then it will instantly zoom in to fill the screen. It's something, honestly, that I can see being really useful for those who teach and use physical whiteboards. This would have been great for me in my old office, but not here at home. I just don't have the space for one here. What I might find useful though is the overhead and desk view modes. Like now the mileage you get on here will depend on your camera's placement and the screen's angle and those kind of things. Now the desk view does what it says on the tin and will point down towards your desk. And there's an overhead view which is meant to be used with a separate stand for some like proper top-down shots. Now there's also a 1/4 inch thread at the bottom which I'm using right here, which you can see. So you can basically mount this thing to pretty much any tripod stand, including one that Insta360 sell as well. And with the Insta360 being $299, it is $1 cheaper than the Opal C1, and it actually works. So to compare, we've gone from this with a Sony camera and a Shure SM7B microphone that costs just over $1,000 to this with a sub $300 webcam. And I'm pretty damn happy with that. Links down below to pick one of these up. And if you want to win some free stuff, sign up to my newsletter where we've just given away a brand new Pixel 6a to one lucky subscriber.